But we have a school to have my Rosh Koller, Rabbi Lebhar. He really got me into halacha when I just got married and went to move to Los Angeles, and I had no kivun. I came from yeshiva mesachtas. I didn't really have any kivun in how to learn halacha, where to start. And Baruch Hashem, he had his his input, and from then on the kesher became very, very strong. And Rabbi Lebhar is world renowned in his mechkar, specifically in Minhagim Morocco, but in Minhagim in general. And Torah Chachmei HaMa'arav with the Sifrei Magen Avot and all the other Sefarim. I don't think I need to introduce over here. Everybody knows the Sefarim Rabbi Lebhar, and now he has even a Mechoin that puts out even more Sefarim, and really a resource, a world resource for these types, for this specific inyanim. And he's digging further and further, and now in an entire Mishnah Shlema around the Minhagei, the Poskei HaMa'arav, how they looked at Torah Maran and Torah Klalei Orah in general. And Zat Hashem will hear. Sure, we have a schut that he's here, and without further ado,
Amen. Okay, thank you, Rabbi Ovadia. It's a mamash a pleasure to be here in this Bet Midrash. I remember when Rabbi Ovadia started it, and Baruch Hashem, there's a lot of unbelievable stuff Rabbi Ovadia is doing over here in Lakewood, and I also wanted to mention the one behind organizing this shiur, Rabbi Rafi Shiprut, who started the Moroccan Heritage Foundation over here, and this is officially the first launch over here of the official in the official capacity. So Be'ezrat Hashem, this foundation should be able to do a lot of great things, and it's a very important thing. And I'm gonna explain the importance of the shiur today. I believe that today I'm not going to be giving any chidushim. I'm not giving any Torah be'iyun, none of my chidushim. You don't need me for that. Baruch Hashem, it's a ir shel chachamim v'sofrim, ir shel hachachamim v'sofrim, we should say, and it has all the you have all the kelim to do that. I want to discuss things that, like the Mesilat Yesharim right, is the most pashut, and it's important to speak about dvarim pshutim. And this shiur comes on the heels of I was in Ben Azmanim Zoche to be in Eretz Yisrael Pesach, and there is really a renaissance and a rejuvenation of all of the young Talmidei Chachamim there. They want to have a mahalach in halacha. They want to be able to have guidance how to be posek lehalacha. And there's a lot of confusion. And they see that by the Ashkenazim there's a very clear Mishnah Berura. There are those who follow Hagon Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal and have a very clear path. And by them they want to know, do we have a clear path as well? What did our Rabbotenu leave us? And I was shocked because I said, well, in all of the Sfarim, it's very clear how we're posek, and they had no idea. They hear the Ramah involved, and they hear the Ashkenazim, and they hear Chabad, and they had all types of very funny ideas. That is just a lack of education. It's not like there's a machloket and there's questions here. Once they delve into the suyot, pshutot, they'll see that it's obvious. And I've been doing that for years. I've always had I gravitated towards Torah Chachmei HaMa'arav. I didn't grow up in Morocco. I grew up in Montreal, which is like Morocco, basically. But that was only like cultural wise. But I didn't. I learned in Ashkenazi yeshivot, and I wanted, I was kind of jealous that the Ashkenazim and the Mishnah Berurah and whatever else, minhag very clear. Even that Mishnah Berurah goes against a lot of minhagim, and I wanted to understand what our Derech Hapesak was, and I made it a mission when I was younger. When I went to Eretz Yisrael to bother Rabbi Shalom Misas, unfortunately for him, and I was really I was able to bother him a lot, and other Gedolei Amarav, Rabbi Yeshua Maman, and then there was the question generally of minhagim, how to follow or not. I was zoche to have a kviyut with Rabbi Yashiv to ask him a lot of these sfikot, which helped a lot in formulating how nowadays we implement a psak that was for many, many years. And when I saw that in Eretz Yisrael, they read Baruch Hashem, my Sfarim, other Sfarim contributed with this rejuvenation of the Derech Hapesak of Chachmei Morocco. It still wasn't clear. It still wasn't in one place. So I started gathering the Klalei Hapesak of Chachmei Morocco. And some people said, it's going to look too elementary, too balabatish, it's not going to be important. But I thought that, just having it down in a simple kuntras to be able to disseminate would be a tremendous to'elet. And I wrote up a lot of it, and I contacted a friend of mine. His name is Rabbi Yosef Peres from Panama, a huge Talmid Chacham that has a lot of yeda in this tchum as well. And he co-authored it with me. We shared documents, and we collaborated. And he's now in Eretz Yisrael for the past 3 weeks. He's going around from kolel to kolel giving shiurim on this Derech Hapesak, and people are just really absorbing it and really being mekabel it, because there's nothing of chidush over here. It's just simple revealing the information that was for hundreds of years. And unfortunately, people are just mebulbal. And once they have this, you'll have if you hear this shiur, and you accept the Derech Hapesak of Chachmei Ma'arav, you'll have the kelim to be posek on your own when learning the Chachmei Poskim. A lot of the confusion will go away. There will always remain confusion in halacha, no matter what. There's always going to remain a gray area. We'll have the questions after, because I want to get to the whole presentation. There's always going to be a gray area, but the crux of it, we're going to see Chachmei Ma'arav possibly the most out of all other communities left for us this gift and this masoret to be able to go according to these klalim and be posek. And when you don't know what to do and you're somech on the klalim, also yeshal mali smoch. It's not, if you don't know what to do and you're somech on the klalim, yeshal mali smoch. If you don't know, maybe this is an exception to the klal. There's always going to be exceptions to the klal. If you don't know the exceptions to the klal, yeshal mali smoch. It's like once I asked Rabbi Yashiv once, what do you do when you don't know what there's a minhag or not? He said, you're somech on the Shulchan Aruch. Whenever you don't know if there's a minhag or not, you're not obligated to be mavar. You could be somech on the Shulchan Aruch. So somech on the Shulchan Aruch is also a very ambiguous term, as we know. What does that mean? If there's a Shulchan Aruch that writes in Bedek HaBayit one ways and in Afkat Rochel in another way, and he writes in there's stirot between the Bet Yosef, and so what do you do then? And then let's say it's Choshen Mishpat and Kibli. So it's still Safek Brachot Leakel, Neged Maran. It gets very confusing. So I want to just lay down a few important klalim, and in order to understand that, we're going to go historically a little bit in the matter. The Moroccan Jewry, when we talk about Moroccan Jewry, we are not talking about the Rambam, the Even Ezra, the Rif, the Ibn Migash, the Rav Donash ben Labrat, who all lived in Morocco. Well, at a certain point in time, they all lived in Morocco. They were all Abedins of Fez or other places. We're not talking about that Klal Hapesak, or the Rambam, who lived in Fez. That was basically destroyed by the Almohads, and there was no Yishuv for many years. In Shnat Resh Nun Bet, Shnat Mizre, there was the Gzera of Girush Sfarad, and the Sfaradim, and this is going to be a very important word, the Sfaradim over here, were exiled, and many of them went into different places, and they brought with them Masoret Hapesak. And when I speak about the Masoret Hapesak of Morocco, that's what we're referring to. Masoret Hapesak of Chachmei Migurashim. And I assume none of this is Chidushim, but as we go along, it's just important to build this all up. Ibn Ezra says there was 50,000, the Barbanel writes there was 50,000 Jews that came to Morocco at the time. Some of them went to Turkey, and even a few went to Chalab, but a lot of them, the Migurashim, scattered in Greece, in a little bit in Tunisia, Algeria, Mitzrayim, but 50,000 of them came to Morocco. It's a significant amount. To Portugal, there was a significant amount, and within a few years already, 30,000 were niftar because there was a tremendous magefa. But that's when already the takanot of the Chachamim started to form. There was a Beddin already, Rav Uziel and others, they already had takanot as early as that time. Takanot that you can get married unless you have 10 people there present, because people were just grabbing girls that they didn't know whether their husbands were still alive, and it was a big mess. It was a very tragic time as well. All of the collateral damage from the Girush Sfarad, and the Chachmei HaMegurashim came. There was already Toshavim, and you have to understand the Toshavim weren't from way back when. Some of them were, but a lot of them came from Sfarad before the Girush, right? There's a whole kuntrus, actually, I borrowed from your father. I might have it. I always have to give it back. The Etz Chaim, which records the whole machloket between the Megurashim and the Sfaradim, and the clash. The Megurashim and the Toshavim, the whole clash that they had between them. It went up to the government, and regarding the Neficha, there's a few things regarding the Neficha, the Chachmei Sfaradim came, and they were strong, they were scholarly, they had power, they were elite. And basically, they ran over whatever basic issue was, and in a few years, the Megurashim dominated already. They were the main kehila. Now, Rav Yomer Yitzchak writes something very important, Rabbi Yitzchak ben Walid, that Torat HaMa'arav came from the Megurashim that they settled in Fez, and from there all the minhagim evolved all around. One of the ta'anot that I know, one great Rav, who is a prominent Rav who's from Moroccan descent, says that, well, the Moroccan minhagim, you have lo kehare Marrakesh, kehare Fez, velo hare kehare Meknes, kehare this. And that's an excuse sometimes to dismiss that it's very ambiguous and there's no real kav. So just to address that every minhagim, every place has different minhagim, just to address that, I want to mention that when we talk about minhagi halacha, we're talking about thousands and tens of thousands of details in halachot. You can't just dismiss something because in minhagi tefillah, one person started here, one person started there, and you saw different things, so it must be you just throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's not how it works. I asked this question to Rabbi Shalom, just to be sure. He told me, Rov minhagi ma'arav are the same. And after years of research, I can tell you that's what I've seen as well. That the crux and the klalim and the main, when we're talking about minhagi halacha, how to be posek, in what thing, what siman, what seifim to be posek, that is the masoret hapesak that was given over, and that was the derech that was followed. And then you have, obviously, in every single country, every single city, by Sephardim, by Ashkenazim, by Edut HaMizrach, you're always going to have different divergence of psakim. But that doesn't, you can't dismiss things because of that. It's important to realize, if you go back to the history, that's where everything started. Okay. So now we came to here. First of all, who were the Megurashim? The Megurashim were influenced mostly by the Rosh. Now, the Rosh escaped Germany because he was afraid what happened to the Marami Rothenburg would happen to him, and he escaped. He first came to the north of Spain, where he learned with the Rashba, apparently for a week, and he then moved to the bottom in the area of Castilia, and he became quickly known as the greatest Rav of the time over there. And the area of Sfarad is different than Ashkenaz, and it's different than the north of Spain, which was more called Katlona, which was more like Katlona. The Ramban in Milchamot writes, "V'sifrei hasfaradim ne'emanim alenu yoter." In other words, there was the Sfaradim, and then there was us, which is the Ramban and the Rashba. So the Rosh, the Tur, the Ran, the Abudram, they were all the Sfaradim. They were all called the Sfaradim. And that's why there's many mikorot that we bring down in the kuntras. You could see. I could just mention some of them now. That the Rosh was the Rav shel Sfaradim, like the Abar Benel writes in Zevach Pesach. Anachnu galut Yerushalayim shebesfarad hinenu noagim kedat harosh. The Marshach writes this way: Arosh Rabam shel Sfaradim kvar nagum etolam kedat harosh. Mishpat Tzedakah Yaakov says Efo shifnei harosh shama yelchu. Rab David ben Yechia writes Hashpat harosh al ben Sfarad horato nitpashta bechol malchutahi. The Talmud of the Rosh Rav Yitzchak Yisraeli writes the same thing. They accepted the Rosh very strong. So this is actually an important thing, because I know a lot of people make this mistake. They see that the Bet Yosef accepted upon himself there. He said, we're going to go according to the Rosh, Rambam, and Rif. So some say, hey, but there was a discrimination over here. He took 2 Sfardim and 1 token Ashkenazi to make the Ashkenazim happen. No, it didn't work to make them happy. It didn't work that way. It's quite the opposite. He took the Rosh because the Rosh was the main Rav for the Sfaradim, and also the Rif of the Rambam. He didn't take the Ashkenazi minhagim into account at all, which is why the Marshal says, well, we have our minhagim, and the Ramah says we have our minhagim, and the Marshal was more upset that he wasn't machriya like Rashi and Tosfot, but the Bet Yosef was being posek, and his lashon in Agdama to the Bet Yosef is Asher kol Bet Yisrael nish'an alehen. In other words, these are the moreh hora'ah of Am Yisrael. These 3, the Rif, Rambam, and Rosh. And the Rosh, for us, for the Sfaradim, much more than everyone else. That's why the Rashba and the Ramban don't take as much of a role over here, because the Bet Yosef was coming from the Masoret of Sfarad, and the Sfarad is much more the Rosh, and that's why we also accepted the Abu Draham so much. So the Noeg B'Chochma writes, Rov minhagi Tefillah come from the Abu Draham. Now, once we understand this came to Morocco, as well as the Rambam was very nechshav as well. In the beginning of the Kuntras, there's a couple mikorot. Sefer Mincha Zikaron Rav Yedidia Monsonego, Klalim Aleph, of the Rachamim Peshutim of the Rav Rachman, Rav Rafael Moshe Ben Naim. Also writes, Didan Kibat Moranu Mitchila Kibal Urot Rambam. Okay, now this is where it gets to the second stage. So the first stage, everyone came following the Rosh. Now you have to understand, following the Rosh, there's many minagim that we have nowadays that are still from the Rosh. Ben Edut Sfarad, Ben Edut HaMizrach. For example, in Siman Reish Nun Gimel in Orach Chaim, there's about leaving the pot on the fire. It's only Ma'achal Ben Dorosai. So all the Maran says you have to wait. He's posek that like Rabbanan, it has to be kulo. But all the Sifkei Poskei Asfaradim and the Edut HaMizrach, Rabbi Tzionah Bashol, Rabbi Avad Yosef, and others, they all say that the minhag is like the Rosh, because hinanachnu adukim bekvot Shabbat. Bet Yosef brings also in Choshen Mishpat in a few places, gam in Siman Resh Tedvav, b'nei Sfarad ichziku le'arosh le'Rabban al pi zuhi miyusedet. In Avkat Rochel he writes this. In many places you'll find that the Rosh had a heavy influence, that they were machriya like that minhag sometimes, and the minhag stayed. There are places that way, but this doesn't mean to say that this was the dominating shita till today. There was a tremendous shift, and I don't think anybody really could pinpoint when this shift happened. I don't know. It happened definitely after Mara. It didn't happen right away in the 1500s when the Bet Yosef Shulchan Aruch came out. It took a little bit of time. It's hard to know. But then you're going to start seeing the Sifrei Chachmei Morocco, like Mishpat Tzedakah Yaakov is known as the most famous one. Rav Ovadia Yosef Zecher Tzadik Ukadosh Livracha, when he came out in his shita to push the psakim of Maran, so his main sources were Chachmei Morocco. Mishpat Tzedakah Yaakov, who says from the famous Rabbi Shmuel ben Dinan, who was there was 2. There was one from the Dora Migurashi Mamash, but this is probably the second one, Rabbi Shmuel ben Maimoni ben Dinan, that we accepted upon ourselves. Pasku kamoto bechol makom afilu keneged elef poskim. And the famous statement that Rav Ovadia Yosef, you've heard many times, that's coming from the works of Rabbi Shpat Tzedakah Yaakov, who's quoting Rabbi Shmuel ben Dinan. It's really one of the first mikorot we have of the Kabbalat Piskei Maran. There was a sefer called Edut Behi Yosef, Rabbi Yosef ben Samaon, Gaon Olam. He has a tshuva in Siman Nun Tet, all on Umdina, like 80 pages on Umdina. It's a tremendous work. And he writes that כבר מוחזק ומקוים אצלנו יותר ויותר מכל הארצות בקבלת דברי מרן. It's known by us. He's writing this where in the 1700s, more than any other country, our Kabbalat Piskei Ma'aran. Wow. Now, it could be in Turkey. They also held it very strong because there was a lot of Migurashim there and in other places. But the real Masoret of the Sfaradim came from Spain and transferred over to Morocco. And in Morocco, there were other places, Eretz Yisrael as well, they accepted Maran. But the Maribei Rav himself, the Rav of Maran, he came to Fez. He had students, he was in Fez. He taught the klal of 2 out of 3, Tremi Gutalat. And it was something that was very mushrash in the Torah Chachmei Ma'arav. I mean, it's so pashut that there are so many of these sources that you'll see yourself, whoever pushed this shita, it's coming from, a lot of it is coming from Chachmei Amarav. There was also Chachmei Shararatzot that pushed this as well. Matayim Rabbinim Nismechu. There's a lot of Rabbanim from different places, but this was much to do with Chachmei Ma'arav, which is, I stopped already responding to people when they started. I said, well, in Morocco, did they accept Maran or not Maran? It's frustrating to me, and it's people sometimes they come from Iraq or other places where in Iraq there was a tremendous scholarship in Iraq. Al-Pi Kabbalah, Rabbi Ariel Ovadia is actually one of the descendants of Yehuda Pataya. When I need a bracha, I ask him. He writes me a kameya or anything else, and they had an unbelievable siyata dishmaya in the Pirushim on the Etz Chaim, but there was a dearth of Torah in Iraq until Rav Tzadka Chutzin, am I not mistaken? He came. They had a plague. They had to import rabbis from Syria. Rav Tzadka Chutzin. They had before, but there was big dearth in the middle, and then they had, and Rav Tzadka Chutzin taught Rav Abdallah Somech, who taught the Ben Ish Chai, and in Persia they didn't have a lot of Torah at all. It was a very difficult time. They didn't. It's very hard to pinpoint. So you have somebody coming from Edut HaMizrach saying, well, did you accept Kabbalat Piskei Maran? It's something very funny. It's something that it's historically it wasn't that way. And Rav Yaakov Chaim Sofer, Shlita from Eretz Yisrael, he's told that besides Morocco, there was not even any... I heard this from a Klisheni, but this is what Rav Yosef Peretz mentioned, that he says that the Kabbalat Piskei Maran was mostly in Morocco and not in other places. But, I mean, you see the Ben Ish Chaim Rav Pe'alin quotes all the time, Kibal Nur Maran, and he's very strong in that.
The Iraqis went with the Turkish. I'm saying they had the Rabbi Chaim Falaji, and
which was Maran.
Which also went with Maran very strong.
Right, which also, so that they were so they got Maran from the from the Turkish source. Right. But I'm saying the ironic thing is that Moroccan Talmidei Chachamim nowadays who don't know this are confused whether we followed Maran or not. It's purely a lack of education. Nobody argues on this. And when people tell me, well, there's two different shitot Hapesak between Rav Ovadia Yosef and the Moroccans, I tell them that the opposite is true. The way that the Ben Ish Chai, the way that the Or Litzion many times, they diverge a lot from Maran, opting a lot of Kabbalistic minhagim, and we'll speak about Morocco and Kabbalah if we have time. But they go on that, and Rav Ovadia Yosef rejuvenated that. No, we should follow Maran based on a lot of Moroccan poskim. So whoever follows Rav Ovadia Yosef, I'm just saying, is much closer to the Derech Hapesak of Chachmei Morocco, and he did a tremendous boost to the Moroccan Derech Hapesak. Just people don't know it, but that's what happened really. That the Maran became kind of a confusion, and Rav Ovadia Yosef brought it to light. Now there's going to be significant differences between how the Derech of Rav Ovadia Yosef himself is Keneged Dat Chachmei Morocco, and that's what because Dat Chachmei Morocco didn't accept Maran the same way that other Edot accepted, and that's what we're gonna explain, because once we get this, we'll understand what their kavana was. So, number one is, and this is what I'm saying now is written dozens, if not hundreds of times in the Chachmei Morocco that these klalim were given over and were being nifsak in the Piskei Adinim for hundreds of years and being given over further and further. Number one is like this. We accepted upon ourselves, Maran, what's written in the Bet Yosef and in the Shulchan Aruch, Bilvad, to the exclusion of what was written in the glosses of the Bedek HaBayit and what was written in the Avkat Rochel and Teshuvat or Shirot Teshuvot Bet Yosef or in the Kesef Mishneh. Now, there's one place that Rabbi Shalom Misas writes this, and Rav Ovadia Yosef attacks us by Nat Barnat the Bet Yosef is mashma that you shouldn't do a Nat Barnat if lechatchila, and Rav Ovadia says, but in the Bedek HaBayit it seems to say you're allowed to do it lechatchila. So I don't understand. So ask Rav Ovadia, if you accepted upon yourself the Shulchan Aruch and the Bet Yosef, that means you're accepting Rav Yosef Karo. And if you're accepting upon yourself Rav Yosef Karo, so you're accepting the Gavra. You're accepting the Gavra. You have to try to figure out of Rav Yosef Karo what he holds. Now, besides like to say that you're accepting the Gavra and then to go ahead and say every 2 or 3 places Safek Brachot Le'akel Neged Maran, or we're not posek this way Neged Maran. It's I just recently on Shabbat I read a psak regarding if I remember Hilchot Tefillin, where the Shulchan Aruch says one way, and there was no reason really to argue on Maran, but Rav Ovadia Yosef, I remember clearly, he says, well, we don't follow Maran over here. And that's fine. There's a lot of times in Klali Hapesak, he says, well, we don't follow Maran, not Safek Brachot Le'akel, and not any other reason. But if you're going to accept Mitzad the Gavra, I still don't have a good answer till today how you could accept the Gavra and how it could go against Maran. But Chachmei Morocco held different. They go Bet Yosef and Shulchan Aruch because, and this is the logic behind it. We're going to see it seems to be a systematic approach over here that we wrote in the Kunchers of Yosef Peretz and I, and he pushes this idea a lot in a few places of Yosef Peretz. He should be well that the logic behind it is that we want to avoid as much confusion as possible. We want to give a Derech Hapesak. You're going to start saying, well, Maran in this place held this way, and this way another way, in the Davar Sof. One of the examples I'll bring to you is somebody who sleeps with his talit at night. Maran writes, if somebody in the end of Siman Chet, that if somebody sleeps with his talit at night, so he wakes up, he does another biracha. Now this is a machloket between the Rosh and the Rambam, whether at night is lav zman tzitzit and therefore it's a hefsek, or maybe it's a din in the ksut, and since you're wearing a ksut that at night it's a day ksut, so you really didn't do a hefsek, so you shouldn't have to do a bracha. Maran says you should do a bracha. Everyone argues on Maran over here. Everyone, and the Mishnah Bura and all the Sephardi poskim that I've seen. Not only that, the Shalmei Tzibur writes that there he found a tshuva in the Ktav Yad that we don't know where, that even Maran was choser. So what do you do over here? So Safek Brachot, you have all odds against you. So in truth, we're working on a project of kind of like the Ish Matzliach, having a Mishnah Bura with Moroccan poskim on the side. It's a big project, and when we got to this, we were a little bit scared. So what are we going to do? We're going to write Al Pi Klali Hapesak to do like Maran. This was a particularly scary psak, how to go about it. And it was kind of like left on the side. Because according to the Klali Hapesak, we should follow Maran. I'm going ahead of myself a little bit. We shouldn't say Safek Brachot Le'akel. So we left it on the side. You're going to see, I should have went a little bit more in order, but just to tell you, 2 months later, we found the Sefer Divrei Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Berdugo, one of the great Chachmei Meknes, Siman Bet, writes mefurash, halan belatalito mevarech, ve'af al pi sheyesh cholkim al Maran, anan lo amrinan safek brachot le'akel neged Maran. Anan lo amrinan safek brachot le'akel neged Maran. In the Teshuvot, in the Shalmei Tzibur, they say maybe we're following what's written in the Shulchan Aruch and in the Bet Yosef, and that is klal number 1. Klal number 2, when Maran doesn't write. This is all in the Kuntrus. I have the Kuntrus over here. Anybody who wants that, whenever Maran it doesn't write something, and the Rama writes something, we accept Moram, the Rama, afilu keneged elef poskim. So we, for some odd reason, the Moroccans were accused of being like Ashkenazim. Like I went to a Syrian camp when I was young, and they say, we have the Sifrei Torah like the Ashkenazim. So first of all, the Sifrei Torah, once I mentioned it, these were the Sifrei Torah that were used in the time of the Gemara. That's where Meir Mezuz writes. Otherwise, the halacha doesn't make sense about gulila betocha. You're not allowed to be gulal betocha tik. There's all types of yeshuvim to it. But that's the original Sifrei Torah that there was. Afterwards, there was designs where they were not to do that way. So, yes, the Ashkenazim did that also. They also eat lunch. So we also eat lunch. That means that everything's the same. It's part of just a lack of a lack of education over here. So what happened was that if Maran didn't write something, the Moroccan poskim said we accept moram afilu keneged poskim, and this is like Ashkenazim. This is more than Ashkenazim. This is more than so nivu velo yodim ma nivu. They say that they didn't know what they were processing, because the reality is that by Ashkenazim, it's a free-for-all. If the Rama says something, and the Shach, and the Taz, and the Magen Avram, they argue, they won't paskin like the Rama. We paskin like the Rama. Many places in Chosh and Mishpat and others, if Bet Yosef say something, Kibadnu Moram Kelet Poskim. I think the logic behind this is to make the Derech Hapesak straight and easy. Third detail is that we don't say Safek Brachot Lehakel against Maran. Now that's a scary statement, because it is nogea to many, many things, and there are places where Rabbi Shalom Misas, where Rabbi Yitzchak ben Walid, and Rabbi Yosef Misas, they do say Safek Brachot against Maran. So this is I want to present to you what we came out with in the Kuntras, and this is what we're struggling with till today. Maybe people, the tzibur over here can help me out. This klal of Safek Brachot Leakel Neged Maran, where does it come from? It's probably from the Chida. It really got traction. In Siman Zayin, the Chida writes, and the Chida was originally from Morocco, but the Chida is not very influential in Moroccan Psak. There are those who wrote that, but it's really, there's a B'Kyu Shua some places, but it's really anybody who has a yad in the Ktavim of Chachmei Morocco will tell you the Chida was not a focal and major player of Chachmei Morocco. He invested on Minhagei Eretz Yisrael. He was born in Yerushalayim. He was born in Yerushalayim, right. His ancestors were there, right. And he was very proud of his Moroccan lineage, but in halacha, he promoted Minhagei Eretz Yisrael and Mi Gadol Lanu Ke'achida. But that's not reflective on Ma'arav, Sfarad, Psak Sfarad of Ma'arav. And Ma'arav, which is when we mentioned is we'll call it the Sfaradim from the original Sfarad, didn't really say, we don't find in their Ktavim that they said Safek Brachot Le'akel until much later. It wasn't ever brought up. And let me give you a few examples in halacha where you could see that, especially in Hilchot Tzitzit. It was interesting. From there you see it. There's 3 halachot. One of them I mentioned, but the other 2, it's written, if nafla talito. Let's say somebody's wearing a talit and his talit fell. So Maran says, you're masiach dat, you put it back on. You have to make a bracha. Rakav Chaim says, well, the Ridva says you don't make a bracha. So since the Ridva says you don't make a bracha, so you should Safek Brachot Le'akel. And the Kaf HaChaim and the Ben Ish Chai, you'll see this a lot in their Ktavim, that even if there is a majority that'll say to make a bracha, but you have miuta poskim to say not to make a bracha, Sabal Neged Maran. That's it. It's the Joker card. Sabal Neged Maran, you don't make a beracha at all, and it's like a threat. Somebody ever tells you, Sabal Neged Maran, you guys, that's it. But what happened? You're saying, especially I understand the Torah of the Kaf HaChaim, Ben Ish Chai. Maybe Kabbalat Maran wasn't in the same darga. I'm not an expert in knowing what the derech of the Kabbalah Psak according to the Ben Ish Chai was. I'm going to leave that up for Rabbi Ovadia, who's from Mitzvah Etzav, but of the Iraqi Masorah. What?
Rabbi Moshe Chaim says that you
From the Chida, right? Because it's coming along from the Chida. That's right. Chazak. That's coming from the Chida. So you have over here Chachmei, a lot of Chachmei Hamizrach that are saying Sabal Neged Maran, but some of them are saying we accepted Maran like so strong in all of his Sfarim. So why are you saying something, bro? I never got a good answer to that. But the irony is that. But you look in the Chachmei Ma'arav, they were very strong Kabbalat Maran. They didn't mention Sabal. So by Naflat Talito, the Bet Oved says you make a bracha. Bet Oved was a very commonly used Sidur in Morocco. Big Chacham, the Shmuel Ashkenazi, that the Chida wrote him Dvarav Divrei Elohim Chaim, and Rabbi Rafael Berdugo in his Torot Emet, right? V'kach anachnu poskim Naflat Talito mevarech kedat Maran, and no question about it. There's also by Pashat Talito. When a person's talit he takes off his talit. Now, naflat talito, I personally, when it falls, I make another bracha. Pashat talito, there's also I'm having a struggle with. It's written in Maran, you take it off, put it back on, you have to make a bracha. So Mishnah Berurah says if you have a talit katan on, then you don't make a bracha. But let's say you don't have a talit katan on. Even if you do have a talit katan, Maran is talking about that. Let's say a glata case that you don't have a talit katan on, and it goes up and you want to put it back on. Maran says to make a bracha. Again, the poskim all chime in. Well, there's machlokets and hesachadat and this. Maran was clearly being posek like the Rishonim and the others that you do make a bracha. And here too, Rabbi Rafael Berdugo, Shufre de Yosef, Rabbi Baruch Avram Toledano, they all say, and we make a bracha. So personally, I haven't gotten enough courage to do that yet. That when I take off my talit, I go to the bathroom, I take off my talit, who says you should take off your talit when you go to the bathroom? Who says it? Only go kavod. That's already it's not such a hefsek, but you take off your talit, you come back out, you put it back on. So you should make a bracha. I didn't build up the confidence yet to do that, but according to Chacham, but I'm being honest with you, but according to Chacham Morocco, that's what should be done. So then I saw the halacha of lan bitalito, where everybody argues on the Shulchan Aruch, and I said, okay, here for sure it can't be. And then we find this Divrei Yosef Berdugo that says, no, you make the bracha. So I don't know where this is going to take us, but it's clear that it wasn't such a strong klal of Sabal Neged Maran. Let me give you another example. We were involved with some of the Moroccan halachot in the Art Scroll Siddur that came out, the Sephardic Art Scroll Siddur, and it's written over there by a women who make the bracha Baruch she'asani kirtzono. So if you look at every single Eduta Mizrach Siddur, it's written over there that women don't make this bracha b'shem u'malchut. Pri Chadash said not to do it at all. Chida says not to do Shem Malchut. It's not written in the Talmud. It's bracha shelo niskara b'Talmud. Big discussion because there's a lot of brachot that we do that are not written in the Talmud. There's a lot of different stirot. Maran writes, Baruch ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asani kirtzono. You open up all the old Sidurim of Livorno, of the all of the old Sidurim, they all, most of them, there was one edition that didn't, I shouldn't say all, a lot of them wrote to make, that women make Baruch ata Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'asani kirtzono. And it's very hard to be kovea minhag by ladies because ladies didn't know how to read, and it was, Rabbi Shalom Misas once told me you can't be kovea what a minhag is from ladies because, but oh, wait.
The second one they did.
What?
The new one they did.
The new one they did because that was the fight in the middle. It was a whole story. I didn't back down on that, and they you know, like I'm not the sole decider there. There's a whole team, but they agreed at the end that it was clear that. And I spoke to a lot of Moroccan chachamim as well. It's very hard to know what women did or what women didn't do. But here you have a status quo. You have all this, Maran says to say it. All the Sidurim say to say that way. You have Rabbanei Eduta Mizrach who say not that way. Among them also the great Rabbeinu Achida. But when you have the Chida against Maran, and you don't have any clear chachamim Morocco that ever said not to do it, women should make the bracha of she'asani kirtzono, and that is we found a lot of rabbanim that did say yes, that was our minhag. Although I'm not convinced you could say there was a minhag, but that's our derech Hapesak. That's our derech Hapesak. So she'asani kirtzono. We have by talit we brought examples. Where else can I? By what?
When you're still in a Talit Katan, that's like a side knee.
That I know. So you see, that's what I would do. What I would try to do is say, hey, by Talit Katan, maybe Maran didn't speak about it, and therefore we could say, no dibarnu al zeh, so I could say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. But it's not so pashut. Maran's also is not mechalik, and the poskim, a lot of them are not mechalik, so that's why we got into a difficulty. What do we do then? Yalav Yom Tov, same thing. Yalav Yom Tov Yom Tov is one of the first meetings I ever had with Rabbi Shalom Misas. As a young kid, and I go to Rabbi Shalom Misas. He just finished writing a tshuva to Rav Ovadia on having to go back. If you don't say Yalav Yavo, having to go back. Rav Ovadia Yosef found a Rashba to be that we say Savek Brachot Lakel Neged Maran. Rabbi Shalom Misas says we don't do that. So there are places where you're going to find that they do say sabal, but it's not in the same way, and you have to know when. When you don't know, the klal could be if you're mevarach yeshal malismoch. That for sure. By the way, there's a whole background discussion over here that bracha she'enes tzricha is deoraita derabanan. Everybody understands deoraita lotisa. A lot of poskim say it's derabanan. Rav Vayomer Yitzchak writes bracha she'enes tzricha is derabanan. There is stirot. Maran writes in one place kimat clearly that is deoraita in Siman Rishtet Vav. But there's a lot of Sephardic chikrei lev. There's a lot of discussion on this that it should be derabanan, and that weighs in a lot into the equation. And also there's equation that what the Chazon Ish says when you're making a bracha derech shvach, it's not called a bracha levatala. There's a lot of discussion what would be considered a bracha levatala or not. But I'm saying you have Maran. We are so mechan Maran. I'm not coming out of the boondocks over here. I follow Maran. And I do believe that in Shamayim, after 120, they're going to say, why did you make a bracha? You say, I followed what the klalim of avotenu verabotenu did. I can't believe that would be a tviyah against us. I have a hard time believing that. Adarabah, you're leaving minhageh and klali rabotenu. That would be worse. The Bakesh Shlomo, Rabbi Shlomo ben Dinan, writes in his Teshuvah that we don't say sfeika against Maran. It's a big discussion regarding especially Bishul Akum. There's a huge machloket regarding Bishul Akum. They know the Sfeik of Rav Yosef. Really, it was the Sfeik of the Ben Ish Chai. He made this Sfeik like the Jalabiyah, right? How do you call it? How do you say it? The Jalabiyah. It's this type of like honey type of baklava type of pastry. And it was, I'm totally wrong on that, right? Okay. Baklava. Okay, sorry. Not my expertise. Although my father-in-law is Egyptian. And they had a problem with Bishul Akum. Ben Ish Chai says, we should make a sfeik over here. Safek, maybe the Rama says that Chito Ya'ish is enough. And Safek, maybe Shfachot Bebet Yisrael is okay. And he's afraid to do that because it's against Maran. Both of these sfeikot are against Maran. Comes along Rav Ovadia Yosef, and he has a very strong point in Yabir Omer. I think it's in Chelek Zayin. Is one of the tshuvot that explains this very well. And he says, we do say safek brachot le'akeh. We do say sfeik neged Maran. We do say sfeik neged Maran. Rabbi Shalom Misas in Mizrach Shemesh fights tooth and nail on this, but he doesn't fight saying we don't say sfeik neged Maran. That's what's interesting. He says he kind of agrees that you could say sfeik neged Maran, Rabbi Shalom Misas, but then he says, but since these two sfeikot, Maran spoke about them explicitly one after the other, that you can't say. And then Rav Ovadia is such a classic teshuvah. You see the greatness of poskim that they could say different things in different areas, and you just have to learn the sugya every time. Rav Ovadia says, I don't understand. Atu, the words of the Rama that Chito Ya'ish works means nothing. It's a beautiful back and forth. Here, it's like the tables turned. It was the same thing they have at Teshuvah regards the Le'achdiso Birto Shel Avram Avinu. Our minhag is like Maran, that we do Le'achdiso Ben Mila de Priya. And Rav Ovadia says, no, but Atu, the minhag Yerushalayim of the Rashbam shouldn't follow. We shouldn't follow over here, which is Neged Maran. There's no klalim. There's no klalim here. Each one has their derech hapesak, how they follow, and we just have to know our derech hapesak is like Maran. And here Rabbi Shalom Misas was interesting. He kind of deviated a little bit from the klali hapesak. He says you could say sfeik neged Maran, but not over here. Rabbi Shlomo ben Dinan says categorically, never say sfeik neged Maran. like the Ben Ish Chai. So these are a few examples. I know it's getting a little bit late, and that say the later ones. The one I found as the earliest of the laters are Yitzchak ben Walid. He writes it in one place, but he writes it Legabe Tovei Ametiv. Yeah, right. It's not always, and I'm saying this klal doesn't appear until then. That's what's interesting.
What's the story now?
So in other words, so we're of the understanding that if somebody is going to follow Maran, yesh al malismoch. I wish we had Gdolim that we could ask what to do about this. I'm navoch about this. You could see I am navoch about this. We don't have Gdolim to ask nowadays, but I'm just saying somebody's going to be. You can't. Two things I want to take out from here. Number one, you can't be quick to dismiss Maran when you say Savir Chalak. Number one, and number two, there's going to be times where where you might say it, but you should know that's as far right now. Maybe in a year we'll find different sources and it'll back us up more. Now there's some people like I think Rabbi Peretz, he's more of like hardcore. We just say like Maran and yeah, but I'm working towards that. It's a work in progress. Yeah. Now the last thing I just want to discuss is this this mizuk between Kabbalah, which is a great misunderstanding. People think that Moroccan halacha didn't follow Kabbalah really. Or maybe they follow Kabbalah, not the Arizal or something. The Torah of the Arizal, when it came to Morocco, it was accepted in a very great way. Until then, there were Mikubalim in Morocco. From Spain, there was great Mikubalim, and they came to Morocco. There was in a place Tarudant, which is actually not far from where the Etrogim are. There was a group of Mikubalim. One of them they just reprinted a new sefer for one of the Mikubalim there. But one of the Mikubalim there was the great Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon Elbaz, the Rambam, the Echal HaKodesh. I'll just give you an interesting irony over here. He writes regarding somebody goes to the bathroom and he has to wash his hands. He's doing Tilat Yadayim with a kli. Magen Avram brings the Echal HaKodesh, and Mishnah Berurah brings the Magen Avram. Many Ashkenazim are machmir to do with a kli going out of the bathroom. Our minig was never to do that. Our minig was without a clear b'shalom. Misas writes all Eduta Mizrach also Rav Ezra Tia and Rav Ben Sion Mutzafi brings a whole list. They weren't makpid with a kli going outside of the bathroom. So Ashkenazim do like a Moroccan mikubal and Mishnah Berurah, and we don't. Interesting. Okay, and then you have, but afterwards the Arizal came along. So there's one Rav Yaakov Maraji. I was with Rav Yaakov Hillel at a Shiva house, and he was telling the people there that the Rav Yaakov Maraji wrote 800 pages just on Bereshit, and they're starting to publish it. He was the Rav of Rav Avram ben Musa, who wrote, if you know, there's a Sefer on Yuma commonly learned in yeshivot called Siach Yitzchak. It's based on the Shita of Rav Avram ben Musa. Machon Magen Avot was able to put out the Shita on Yuma that was never published yet. Rav Avram ben Musa was a tremendous mikubal. He was one of the authors of the Migdash Melech, which is a heavily used sefer that was in Marrakesh from Rav Avram Azulai, not the Chesed Lavram. The other one, the other from Marrakesh. They were great. Rabbi Shlomo Amar, Rav Yaakov Pinto. There was great Chachmei HaKabbalah, and they're all dealing with the Arizal and accepting the Arizal Torah mikubelet. In other words, that was accepted. Rav Avram ben Musa actually, because of a whole story that he got in trouble with the government there in Fez, he ran away and he brought Kabbalah to Tunisia. His students, Rav Lambroso and others, were brought to Tunisia, and he's buried in like mamish he's buried in a rent-a-car in middle of Tunisia, in the back of a rent-a-car office. There's a deal with them to preserve the kever as much as possible, but that's the reality. When the Gdoledor, they once tried to move him, and there is a whole story written in the British newspapers how the people with the axes, their hands stopped working. Kadosh Elyon, Rav Avram ben Musa, Zchuto Gen Aleinu. He wrote Nirdi Natan Recho. He was one of the great mikubalim. There's a lot, tremendous amount of mikubalim, and they all followed the result. Just there's one big difference, and this happened in this generation. Rav Shmuel Vital writes that in Hagot Marshua Nashara Kavanot Dafnun, אף על פי שכתב זה אבא מורי שאין לומר פזמונים שתקנו על בני האחרונים, ראיתי כשהיה שץ בקהל ימים נוראים, היה אומר כל הווידויים הנזכרים משום שמנהגם של ישראל תורה הוא. The Rizal himself, or the Chaim Vital himself, I'm sorry, would not do anything that's Kabbalah Betzibur. They were very careful, in Morocco especially, they were very vigilant on Yohara, on doing things publicly of Kabbalah for the Tzibur. That's where there's a difference. There was a lot of Minhagei Kabbalah that were accepted in Morocco. For example, the Bracha V'noten Layef Koach. Besides Miknes that stuck it out, and they don't make a bracha till today like Maran, but Kabbalah had a big influence that changed that. Chochma Bina Vadat, in many places, Kabbalah changed that instead of the Bina Vaskel. Some places, especially north of Morocco, they're sticklers and they won't change no matter what. Or and Noten Lev Koach, also Rabbi Shalom Yisrael, they are not going to change. Otherwise, they change. I mean, Rabbi Shalom Yisrael is very much that almost nothing should be. It was for the tzibur was mushpa v'Kabbalah. Besides a few places, he writes even the fact that we do the brachot hashachar. We all do brachot hashachar. We're not so like Maran. Only when the tarnigol, when we hear the tarnigol, he says that's because of the Ramah. That's not because of Kabbalah. And others say no, it's because of Kabbalah. It's definitely that might depend in different areas, but there was definitely a big influence of the Arizal. Whether it was nitpashet to all the tzibur, that's another story. But it's definitely that it's a sensitive inyan when exactly it changed, and does a person have the right to change back once it was changed for a good reason? That's just some of the examples. So, what? Make ha'etz on what? Ha'etz. Because of no, I know that's like later. Yeah, because then you're going to see a lot of minagim come from Bet El and from all different yeshivot amikubalim. Then you're going to understand that for sure it's not something that we have to give din v'cheshbon whether we follow or not. I think what's written in the Arizal. Then you have all types of hanagot that wearing tefillin on Tisha B'Av when Maran says not to wear tefillin. This came from Bet El and even by the mikubalim, or brachav me'en sheva on erev Pesach Yom Shabbat. The minhag in Yerushalayim, it's a huge controversy. Nothing to do with Moroccans. We didn't follow all of different minagim that come out of Bet El or not. That Rabbi Ovadia has to work out. That's his problems, whether how they follow in each thing. Al pi Kabbalah, how much it trumped, how much it didn't trump. That he's going to get the big things. But by Morocco, it was very clear. Many things of the Arizal we kept. Some of them were in Pashat and the Sibur, but things that had to do, even with the Rashash and with the Bet El and others, very, very rare that you'll find that's how Chachmei Morocco held. So just to wrap up, it was a pleasure being here. Just the klalim of psak that we find by Chachmei Morocco were klalim brurim that we followed Maran. We followed Maran in the Bet Yosef and the Shulchan Aruch. We followed Maran even keneged brachot. We followed Maran in cases of. I didn't even speak about Kimli. We didn't say Kimli against Maran. We didn't say Sfeika against Maran. When Maran didn't speak, we followed the Ramah. And Idach Zil Gemor. I think we covered a lot of stuff already. And I'm open for questions. If you want, I do have a